A rifle cracks and Samuel Gibson 18 ducks as an arrow thuds into the wagon box inches from his face. It's August 2nd and 1867, and he's one of 32 men trapped in a flimsy corral surrounded by hundreds of Sioux, Cheyenne, and Arapaho warriors. Their war cries shake the Wyoming air, and Gibson's hands tremble on his rifle. "Shoot to kill!" Captain Powell shouts as a spear sails past. Outnumbered 10-1, they're fighting for their lives. Can their new rifles save them, or will they share the gruesome fate of 81 soldiers slaughtered nearby? But before the arrows flew, the morning started with a deceptive calm. On August 2nd, 1867, just before 7 a.m., the plains near Fort Phil Kearny are quiet. The sun paints the horizon gold, but danger looms. Samuel Gibson crouches behind a wagon box, pulse racing, watching painted ponies shift restlessly as warriors close in. He grips his rifle, knowing this could be his last stand. He's one of 32 men in a makeshift Fort 14 wagon boxes yanked off their wheels. They're a mix soldiers from the 27th Infantry Regiment. Some battle-hardened, others green, plus woodcutters, more used to axes than guns. Different worlds, one fight. The odds, 10 warriors for every one of them. The wagon boxes are their only shield set in a rough circle, stuffed with crates, barrels, and ox yokes for cover. The wood sturdy built for hauling, but now it's their lifeline, a ledge for rifles. Tents outside flap in the wind, hiding the warriors' moves, turning every shadow into a threat. As Gibson steals a glance at the circling force, the truth hits. This shaky ring of wagons is all they've got to face. A battle ready to explode. To understand the wagon box fight, we need to step back and see the bigger picture. It's 1867, and the American frontier is a powder keg. The U.S. is pushing west, hungry for land and gold, but the Plains tribes aren't standing idly by. This clash is part of Red Cloud's War, a fierce Lakota-led fight against American expansion along the Bozeman Trail, a route cutting through the heart of tribal territory. Named after Oglala Lakota leader Red Cloud, this war runs from 1866 to 1868, and the Wagon Box Fight is one of its defining moments. The U.S. builds forts like Phil Kearny, C.F. Smith, and Reno to shield settlers heading to Montana's gold fields. But to the Sioux, Cheyenne, and Arapaho, these forts are invaders' outposts on their land. Every log hauled, every soldier posted ratchets up the tension. Just 8 months earlier, on December 21, 1866, that tension exploded in the Fetterman Massacre right near Fort Phil Kearny. Captain William J. Fetterman led 81 soldiers into a trap set by Sioux, Cheyenne, and Arapaho warriors. None survived. When a cavalry unit arrived the next day, they found a gruesome scene. Bodies scalped, gutted, and mutilated, some with faces smashed beyond recognition. The news spread like wildfire, shocking cities back east and haunting every soldier and settler in Wyoming. For the men now huddled in the wagon box corral, those images are burned into their minds, fueling both fear and a burning need for revenge. They know what these warriors can do, and they're terrified of meeting the same fate. For the tribes, this isn't just about pushing back settlers, it's about survival. The Sioux, Cheyenne, and northern Arapaho see the Powder River Basin as sacred a place of buffalo herds and ancestral hunting grounds. Every fort, every wagon train threatens their way of life. Young warriors like the rising Oglala Lakota fighter. Crazy Horse don't just fight for land, they fight for honor. Proving courage in battle is a path to respect, even if it means risking death. These warriors aren't a faceless enemy. They're men defending their families, their culture, and their future, united by a shared cause, despite their distinct traditions. The fight stakes are shaped by a quiet but seismic shift in technology. Before the 1860s, U.S. soldiers relied on muzzle-loading rifles like the Springfield Model 1861, which took ages to reload, firing maybe 2 or 3 rounds a minute, if you were quick. Plains warriors with their bows or early rifles could outpace that darting in after a volley, while soldiers fumbled with powder and ramrods. But now, things are different. The Springfield Model Chapter 1866 breech loader changes everything. It's not a repeating rifle, but its design lets soldiers slap in a new cartridge in seconds, firing 8 to 10 rounds a minute. That speed tilts the battlefield, making it harder for warriors to exploit their old hit-and-run tactics. As the men in the wagon boxes check their rifles, they're holding a new kind of power, one the tribes haven't fully faced before. This clash of old ways and new weapons sets the stage for what's about to unfold. As the sun climbs higher over the Wyoming plains on August 2, 1867, the men inside the wagon box corral know time is running out. The Sioux, Cheyenne, and Arapaho warriors are massing, their numbers growing, and the air hums with the threat of battle. Inside the makeshift fort, 32 defenders scramble to ready themselves, checking rifles, stacking ammo, and stealing glances at the horizon. They're outnumbered maybe 10 to 1, but they've got a few tricks up their sleeves and a grim determination to survive. The Americans are well armed, and that's their biggest edge. They've got 7,000 rounds of .58 caliber ammunition, enough to keep firing for hours if they're careful. Their weapons are Springfield Model 1866 breech-loading rifles, a game-changer that can pump out 8 to 10 rounds a minute, far faster than the old muzzle loaders. These rifles let a soldier pop open the breech slide in a cartridge and fire again in seconds, a speed that could catch the warriors off guard. But there's a catch. Tents pitched just outside the corral's oval of wagon boxes block their view. The flapping canvas hides the warriors' movements, making it tough to plan where to aim or when to expect an attack. The men curse the tents, knowing they'll have to react fast when the fighting starts. Some of the older soldiers, the ones who have seen what happens when Plains warriors take prisoners, aren't taking any chances. They've heard the stories from the Fetterman Massacre, where men were butchered and mutilated, and they're not about to let that happen to them. In a chilling move, several veterans slip off a boot tie, a 3-foot cord to their big toe, and loop the other end through their rifle's trigger guard. If the corral is overrun, they'll pull the cord with their foot and end it themselves, denying the warriors a live captive. It's a grim choice, but for these men, it's better than the alternative. Young Samuel Gibson watches his stomach churning as he starts to follow their lead, tying his own cord while the weight of their fear sinks in. Out beyond the corral, the Sioux, Cheyenne, and northern Arapaho warriors are preparing too, their numbers swelling to somewhere between 300 and 1,000 strong. Most are Oglala Lakota fierce fighters from the Powder River Basin, joined by their Cheyenne and Arapaho allies from the northern plains. They're a striking sight, daubed in bright war paint that marks their faces and bodies, their ponies painted to match. Their weapons are a mix of tradition and adaptation bows that can loose up to 20 arrows a minute in skilled hands, far outpacing older rifles, spears for close combat, and a growing number of firearms, though not as advanced as the soldiers. They check their quivers, test bowstrings for tautness, and load their guns, all while performing rituals to steel themselves for the fight. Their chants and movements carry a fierce pride, a reminder that they're not just fighting for land, but for their people's way of life. Leading this coalition, at least in spirit, is Red Cloud, the Oglala Lakota chief, whose name alone sends shivers through Fort Phil Kearny. Historians still argue whether he was there in person directing the attack from a nearby ridge or orchestrating the broader campaign from afar. Either way, his vision of resistance unites the tribes, blending their strengths into a formidable force. Among the warriors is likely Crazy Horse, a young Oglala already known for his daring. His bold, unpredictable tactics, charging headlong or outflanking enemies, make him a rising star, and his presence adds a spark of fearlessness to the warriors' ranks. As both sides brace for the clash, the corral's defenders and the circling warriors are locked in a tense standoff, each preparing to fight for everything they hold dear. The calm shatters just after 7 a.m. on August 2, 1867. The Sioux, Cheyenne, and Arapaho warriors launch their attack, and the Wyoming plains erupt into chaos. Captain James Powell's voice cuts through the tension inside the wagon box corral. "Men, here they come. Shoot to kill." The 32 defenders snap into action, resting their Springfield rifles on the wagon boxes, eyes locked on the charging warriors. Hundreds of them swarm the corral, some on horseback, others on foot, firing rifles, loosing arrows, and hurling spears. The air fills with piercing war cries and the whistle of projectiles as the warriors circle the corral, closing within 100 yards. Some ride low, clinging to their ponies' sides, making themselves near impossible targets, while others boldly gallop closer, tossing spears or firing arrows that thud into the wooden boxes. The defenders have one big advantage: their Springfield Model 1866 breech-loading rifles. These weapons let them fire 8 to 10 rounds a minute, a relentless barrage that catches the warriors off guard. The tribes expect the soldiers to pause and reload like they did with older muzzle loaders, giving time for a swift advance. Instead, the Americans keep shooting, ejecting spent shells and slamming in new ones without breaking rhythm. The wagon boxes, though splintered by bullets and arrows, hold firm, giving the men steady platforms to aim from. The corral becomes a fortress of firepower, mowing down warriors who get too close. Samuel Gibson, gripping his rifle, marvels at how they're holding the line, but the onslaught keeps coming, and the wagon tops are shredded to slivers under the hail of enemy fire. Amid the chaos, one warrior stands out. From the East Ridge, a tall figure, possibly a sub-chief, charges repeatedly, wielding a buffalo hide shield and a spear. He taunts the defenders, dodging bullets with leaps and sprints, his war song ringing out. He seems untouchable, surviving volley after volley until around 2 p.m. The soldiers take careful aim. As he shifts his shield and runs forward, a coordinated blast catches him mid-stride. He collapses, riddled with bullets, and the attacks from that ridge grind to a halt. The defenders breathe a little easier, but the cost of the fight is already heavy. The Americans aren't unscathed. Lieutenant John Janess falls at the corral's west end, struck through the head and heart, his body slumped near a supply barrel. Private Henry Haggerty takes a bullet in the shoulder early on, but refuses to stop. For 2 hours he loads and fires with his good arm, blood soaking his uniform, until a shot to the head drops him. Private Tommy Doyle, fighting behind a makeshift barrier of ox yokes, is hit in the forehead and killed instantly. The losses sting, but the men keep firing, knowing their families at Fort Phil Kearny, just 6 miles away, depend on them holding the line. The battle isn't just about gunfire, it's a struggle to survive the elements too. The warriors rain down arrows tipped with fire, setting the dry grass and manure piles inside the corral ablaze. Smoke chokes the air, and the heat scorches the defenders' hands as their rifle barrels glow red from constant firing. Water is running out fast. A barrel 20 feet outside the corral is riddled with bullet holes nearly drained. Desperate, the camp cook points to 2 coffee pots filled with water stashed under the chuck wagon a few yards away. Samuel Gibson and Johnny Grady volunteer, crawling out under a hail of bullets as their comrades lay down cover fire. They grab the pots, but one takes a hit, spilling most of its precious contents. They scramble back, handing out what little water remains a small victory in the grinding fight. The warriors show incredible coordination even in the heat of battle. From bluffs to the east and west, they flash signal mirrors glinting in the sunlight to plan their next moves. Their teamwork shines brightest in their rescue efforts. Pairs of riders gallop onto the open ground, leaning low to scoop up wounded comrades without slowing down. One warrior rides on each side of a fallen man, grabbing him mid-stride and racing to safety. The defenders can't help but admire the skill even as they keep firing. These moments of bravery and loss weave through the battle, each side fighting not just for victory, but for the people they're sworn to protect. By mid-afternoon on August 2, 1867, the Wagon Box Fight has dragged on for hours, and the 32 defenders are exhausted. Their hands burn from red-hot rifle barrels. Their throats are parched, and the corral is choked with smoke from burning grass. The Sioux, Cheyenne, and Arapaho warriors haven't let up, but the Americans are still holding the line. Around 3 p.m., the battle reaches its peak as the warriors launch one final massive assault. This time it's different. 300 to 400 of them come on foot, forming a tight V shape, charging straight at the corral like a spear aimed at its heart. Leading the way is a bold figure, possibly Red Cloud's nephew, though historians can't confirm it. He wears a striking war bonnet, feathers trailing as he runs. But within moments the defender's rifles roar, and he falls cut down by a hail of bullets early in the charge. The warriors press forward undeterred, their shouts filling the air as they close to within yards of the wagon boxes. The defenders fire with desperate precision, their Springfield Model 1866 rifles spitting lead at a relentless pace. Dozens of warriors drop, some so close the soldiers can see the determination in their eyes. The barrage is too much and the attack falters. The V formation breaks apart and the warriors retreat, scrambling back to the safety of the plains. Hundreds of mounted warriors watching from the south hold their ground, staying out of rifle range. They don't join the charge, perhaps sensing the tide has turned. Inside the corral, the men catch their breath. Stunned, they've held off such a fierce push, but they know the fight isn't over yet. Then a new sound cuts through the haze, a low, booming roar from the west. It's the unmistakable thud of howitzer fire, and it changes everything. Major Benjamin Smith's relief column, 100 soldiers strong from Fort Phil Kearny, is closing in fast. The cannon's blasts echo across the valley, and the warriors react instantly. The Sioux, Cheyenne, and Arapaho know their way of fighting doesn't involve digging in for a losing battle. They've already lost too many, and holding ground isn't worth the cost. In a matter of minutes, they melt away into the plains riders and foot warriors, vanishing as quickly as they appeared. Some break off in small groups, 2s and 3s, heading east over the ridges. Others gallop down the Big Piney Valley out of sight. The corral, battered and scorched, stands quiet for the first time in hours. As the dust settles, the defenders spot the blue uniforms of Smith's column approaching. Relief floods through them, raw and overwhelming. The men leap to their feet, tossing their caps into the air, shouting until their voices crack. Some hug each other. Others collapse, tears streaming down dusty faces. After nearly 8 hours of relentless fighting, the weight of survival hits them hard. They laugh, they sob, they grab each other like brothers, caught in a wild mix of joy and disbelief. They've faced hundreds of warriors, lost friends, and stared death in the face. But they're alive. The corral, their fragile fortress, held. As they gather themselves, the reality sinks in, the wagon box. Fight is over, and they've made it through one of the frontier's deadliest days. As the howitzer smoke clears on August 2nd, 1867, the Wagon Box Fight leaves the Wyoming plains silent but scarred. The corral, battered by bullets and blackened by fire, stands as a testament to the defenders' grit. The cost of the battle is heavy on both sides, and its echoes will ripple far beyond this day. For the 32 men who fought, the immediate task is to honor their fallen and make it back to safety. But the fight's impact will shape the frontier for years to come. The toll is stark. The U.S. side loses 3 men, Lieutenant John Janess shot through the head and heart, Private Henry Haggerty, who fought on despite a wounded shoulder until a fatal headshot, and Private Tommy Doyle killed by a bullet to the forehead. 2 others are wounded, their survival hanging by a thread. That 29 men are still standing feels like a miracle, given the hundreds of warriors they faced. For the Sioux, Cheyenne, and Arapaho, the losses are harder to pin down, as tribal records are scarce. U.S. estimates suggest 20 to 60 warriors killed and over 100 wounded, a heavy blow to their tight-knit communities. Each fallen warrior is a son, a brother, a leader, and their absence will be felt deeply. With the warriors gone, the survivors turn to the grim work of leaving the corral. They carefully place the bodies of Janess, Haggerty, and Doyle into field ambulances brought by Major Benjamin Smith's relief column. The 6-mile trek back to Fort Phil Kearny is tense, every man clutching his rifle, eyes scanning the horizon for any sign of a returning attack. The reinforcements, 100 soldiers strong, march alongside their faces, showing disbelief. They expected to find the corral overrun, not a ragged but living group of defenders who held off a force 10 times their size. Their astonishment is a quiet nod to the defenders' courage, though no one feels like celebrating yet. Years later, Samuel Gibson, one of the young privates who tied a cord to his toe that day, looks back on the fight. After a 48-year Army career, including battles in the Sioux Campaign of 1876 and the Wounded Knee conflict of 1890 to 1891, he still calls the Wagon Box Fight his toughest day. The memory of those 8 hours dodging arrows, choking on smoke, watching friends fall, never fades. For Gibson and the others, it's not just a battle. It's the moment that tested them like nothing else, a story they'll carry to their graves. The fight's bigger impact unfolds over time. The Wagon Box Fight shows the deadly power of the Springfield Model 1866 rifles, a sign of things to come for the Plains tribes. The U.S. Army's growing firepower, paired with sheer numbers, starts to tip the scales, hinting at the slow decline of tribal resistance. The Sioux, Cheyenne, and Arapaho remain fierce, but battles like this one chip away at their ability to hold their lands. Red Cloud's war, though, isn't over yet. The next year, in 1868, the Treaty of Fort Laramie brings a temporary victory for the tribes, forcing the U.S. to abandon the Bozeman Trail and its forts, including Phil Kearny. For a moment, the Powder River Basin stays in tribal hands, a rare win against the tide of American expansion. But the Wagon Box Fight marks a turning point, a glimpse of the relentless push that will reshape the frontier in the decades ahead. The Wagon Box Fight isn't just a single day of battle. It's a window into a larger struggle that shaped the American frontier. On August 2, 1867, the clash between 32 U.S. defenders and hundreds of Sioux, Cheyenne, and Arapaho warriors revealed deep truths about courage, technology, and the cost of conflict. Looking back, we see not just a fight for survival, but a moment that changed the course of history for both sides, marked by respect, innovation, and a heartbreaking path forward. Even in the heat of battle, a quiet respect grew between enemies. The defenders, pinned inside their corral, couldn't help but admire the warriors' bravery, especially when pairs of riders risked everything to scoop up wounded comrades and gallop to safety. It was a display of loyalty and skill that stood out even to men aiming rifles at them. For the Sioux, Cheyenne, and Arapaho, this wasn't just about defending land. They fought for their culture, their families, and the honor that came with standing up to an overwhelming foe. Young warriors like Crazy Horse saw battle as a way to prove themselves, not just to win ground, but to carry their people's spirit forward. Despite the bloodshed, both sides saw something human in the other, a shared drive to protect what mattered most. The fight also marked a turning point in how battles were fought on the plains. The Springfield Model 1866 rifle, with its fast breech-loading design, let the defenders fire 8 to 10 rounds a minute apace that threw off the warriors' tactics. For years, tribes had relied on their bows, which could loose up to 20 arrows a minute, outmatching the slow muzzle loaders of the past. But the Springfield's speed and reliability shrank that advantage, making it harder for warriors to dodge and strike between volleys. This wasn't just a win for the corral's defenders. It was a sign that technology was tilting the balance, giving the U.S. Army an edge that would grow in the years ahead. Red Cloud. The Oglala Lakota leader looms large over this story. Whether he was there or directing from afar, his vision drove the tribe's resistance. His campaign, known as Red Cloud's War, achieved something rare. It forced the U.S. to back down. By 1868, the Treaty of Fort Laramie ended the conflict, and the U.S. abandoned the Bozeman Trail and its forts, including Fort Phil Kearny. For a time, the Powder River Basin stayed in tribal hands, a victory few Native leaders could claim. But Red Cloud's success came with a cat. The same technology that faltered his warriors in the Wagon Box Fight, those breech-loading rifles, limited what his forces could achieve. No matter how brilliant his strategies, the tribes faced an enemy with growing firepower and numbers. The Wagon Box Fight also casts a shadow forward, marking the start of a tragic decline for the Sioux, Cheyenne, and Arapaho. By the 1880s, the U.S. Army's relentless push, backed by superior weapons and waves of settlers, overwhelmed the tribes. Their way of life, roaming the plains hunting buffalo, living free, faded as reservations took hold. The fight was a glimpse of what was coming, a slow but unstoppable shift. Later battles like Little Bighorn in 1876 showed the tribes could still strike hard, but defeats like Wounded Knee in 1890 brought devastating losses. Both sides committed atrocities in these years, from massacres to ambushes, leaving scars that linger in history. The Wagon Box Fight, though small in scale, was a step on this painful path, a moment when the future of the plains began to take shape. The Wagon Box Fight, fought on August 2, 1867, isn't just a gripping story. It's a piece of history we pieced together from first-hand accounts and careful research. But like any event from the frontier, some details are crystal clear, while others are murky, debated by historians. To this day, digging into the sources and context helps us understand what happened, what's uncertain, and why this battle matters in the bigger picture of the American West. Our main window into the fight comes from Samuel Gibson, the young private who stared down hundreds of warriors from behind a wagon box. Decades later, in 1910, he published his memoir as part of the story of the 27th Infantry. His account is a goldmine packed with vivid details: the war cries, the smoke-filled corral, the cord he tied to his toe in case the worst happened. It's a front-row seat to the chaos written by someone who lived it. But not everything Gibson wrote checks out. Some of his claims, like spotting Red Cloud himself on a ridge, don't have backup from other sources. His memory, sharp as it was, might have blurred over time, or he might have added a bit of flair to the tale. Still, his words are the backbone of what we know about that day. Then there are the details historians still argue over. Was Red Cloud, the Oglala Lakota leader, actually there directing the attack? Many think he was more likely calling the shots from a distance, orchestrating the broader campaign of Red Cloud's war. The idea of him standing on a ridge rallying warriors comes mostly from Gibson's memoir, and it's shaky without more evidence. Same goes for the warrior Gibson, called Red Cloud's nephew, said to lead the final charge in a war bonnet. It's a dramatic image, but no other records confirm this figure, so it's likely just Gibson's recollection unverified by tribal or military accounts. Another sticking point is the body count. U.S. reports claimed up to 500 warriors attacked and 180 were killed, but those numbers feel inflated. Tribal records are sparse, and modern estimates peg the attackers at 300 to 1,000 with 20 to 60 killed. Big numbers made for bold headlines back east, but they don't always hold up. Zooming out, the Wagon Box Fight wasn't a lone event. It was part of a bigger wave of resistance. Just one day earlier, on August 1, 1867, another group of Sioux, Cheyenne, and Arapaho warriors clashed with U.S. forces at the Hayfield Fight near Fort C.F. Smith in Montana. The timing wasn't a coincidence. These attacks showed a coordinated tribal strategy to hit the Americans hard, disrupting their hold on the Bozeman Trail. Both fights, though miles apart, were pieces of the same puzzle, a push to protect the Powder River Basin from encroaching forts and settlers. The Wagon Box Fight, with its brutal intensity, fits into this broader clash between nomadic tribal cultures and U.S. colonialism. It's a snapshot of a turning point when the Plains tribe's way of life, free tied to the land and buffalo, was starting to crumble. By the late 1800s, the reservation era took hold, a painful shift driven by battles like this one, where technology and numbers began to overwhelm the tribe's resistance.